My family always ridiculed me and compared me to my sister throughout my life, but now they are desperately pleading to be invited to my wedding because I am marrying someone wealthy. I was about to agree, until my aunt revealed something shocking. I'm 23 years old and was born into a middle-class family consisting of my parents and my older sister Kelly, who's 25. My parents were academics, so they naturally had high expectations for both Kelly and me. Kelly was an excellent student, extremely successful, and looked like a Greek goddess. I, on the other hand, wasn't as good academically, wasn't as attractive, and was overweight, but I was talented in art from a very young age. People who say appearance doesn't matter in society have probably never been truly unattractive. I faced discrimination because of my looks, even from my own family. I could understand my parents scolding me about my studies, but they always ended up making comments about my appearance. They constantly compared me to Kelly, saying I couldn't even fulfill the dumb blonde stereotype since I failed at everything else. Kelly didn't say much, but I could feel her judgmental gaze every time we walked to school together, like she was embarrassed to be seen with me. Even as kids, at every family event, whenever someone tried to praise me for something, my parents would interrupt with jokes about how bad I looked. They compared my face to animals, provoking awkward laughter from others since they were the hosts. But the damage they caused was irreversible. I thought it was my fault for being ugly, which led to a deep inferiority complex. I rarely spoke to anyone or joined school activities for fear of being judged. One day, my school counselor found me drawing alone in an empty classroom and suggested I enter an upcoming poster contest. I declined, but she dug deeper, talked to me, and learned about my struggles. She called my parents that same day, urging them to take me to a psychologist because their constant criticism wasn't helping. To avoid being labeled neglectful, my parents reluctantly agreed to therapy for me. The following years were better. I built my self-esteem with my therapist's help, but the sarcastic comments from my parents never stopped. They mocked my appearance, and when I expressed my disapproval, they told me to learn to take a joke. That's when I decided I'd move out as soon as I turned 18. When my 18th birthday finally came, my parents still managed to make it all about Kelly. Kelly got a modeling job. Kelly got into a prestigious university. Kelly was the best. That's all I heard during my party. Only my maternal aunt stood up and reminded everyone it was my birthday, and that maybe we should talk about me for once. Everyone agreed except my family, who didn't like my aunt's intervention and stayed silent for the rest of the party, even during the birthday song. After the party, I went to my room and cried. The next day, I called a friend who helped me find a small apartment. I had saved money from my part-time job, so finances weren't an issue. Moving out didn't cause a stir in my family. No one asked why. In fact, they didn't even notice I was leaving for good until I started loading my friend's car with boxes. They barely said anything, just a passing remark about how the house would finally look better without me. Kelly unexpectedly gave me a book she liked as a parting gift. That year, I worked and studied incredibly hard. I discovered a passion for software engineering and was fortunate enough to get into a prestigious university for it. I hadn't spoken to my parents since moving out, but I decided to invite them to my graduation. When I arrived at their house, the door was locked. I called them multiple times, and when they finally answered, they told me they couldn't attend because they were on vacation overseas. I thought they might change their minds when they learned of my acceptance to a top university or offer to help with tuition as they had with Kelly. But all I got was a half-hearted, "Oh, that's great. Good for you." I hung up and went straight to my aunt's house to invite her instead. We talked, I cried over my family's indifference, and she promised to be there for me. After that, I moved to another city for university. 6 years later, I was working as a software engineer at a reputable company while freelancing as a graphic designer. My relationship with my family was almost non-existent during those years. They only contacted me for major family events, where I was often the butt of their jokes, so I stopped attending altogether. My aunt noticed and began inviting me to her house for every holiday. Because of her, I didn't miss my family much. At work, my company had a relaxed culture with no visible hierarchy among employees. One day, we needed someone to redesign our logo, and I volunteered. They paired me with a guy from the office I hadn't met before. Let's call him Rob. We worked together on the project for 3 months, becoming great friends. After a while, we started hanging out outside of work, and it soon turned into a relationship. By the end of the project, I learned that Rob was actually the CEO and founder of the company. To me, though, he was just Rob. A year later, during a trip to Paris, Rob proposed in the most extravagant way. I was overjoyed and immediately told my aunt. The next day, I sent an email to my family and posted the news on Facebook for my extended relatives. To my surprise, my mother called me for the first time in nearly 7 years. She sounded thrilled, congratulated me, and invited me to a private family dinner the following weekend. I hesitated, but agreed. The dinner wasn't at their house, but at a fancy restaurant. I met my parents and Kelly, who was between jobs since finishing university. My parents acted unusually kind, but I stayed cautious. When they brought up the wedding, I told them I hadn't made any plans yet. That's when they dropped their facade. They begged me to include them in the wedding. I was shocked and made it clear that it was my decision. I reminded them they had been absent for nearly 7 years and only reappeared when they needed something. Silence followed, and I asked for the check. Expecting to split the bill, I was stunned when they assumed I'd pay the entire amount because I was marrying a wealthy man. Frustrated, I paid the bill and left without saying goodbye. I told Rob about the incident, and he reassured me that the wedding would be exactly how I wanted it, with only the people I cared about. After that dinner, my parents began calling constantly. At first, I was reluctant due to their past behavior, but after numerous apologies for how they treated me during my childhood and beyond, I decided to give them a second chance. I told them my father could walk me down the aisle, and my mother and Kelly could be bridesmaids. They were thrilled. However, things took a turn when they started shopping for the wedding. They picked out the most expensive items from high-end stores and expected me to foot the bill. I made it clear I'd send them references and wasn't paying for anything they chose. They tried to charm their way out of it, but I stood firm. About 5 months before the wedding, Rob and I decided to host an engagement announcement in my city. We created the guest list accordingly, inviting my family and many relatives to the event. It was well known that since Rob was the CEO, many distinguished guests would be invited to each event. My parents were thrilled to be included, and everything seemed to be going smoothly until I got a call from my aunt. She said she needed to talk in person as soon as possible. When I met her a few days later, she told me that my family was planning something against me. She revealed that my mother, fully aware of my dislike for them and Kelly, was plotting to cause a scene at my engagement party. My parents' financial situation had worsened after sending Kelly to college since my father had retired, leaving my mother as the sole provider. With Kelly doing nothing after graduation, they were struggling financially. Upon learning that I was engaged to a wealthy man, they tried to reconcile with me, hoping I'd become their personal ATM. When I rejected their efforts, they devised a sneakier plan. Their initial idea was to make Kelly my maid of honor to match her with one of the groomsmen. I dismissed that immediately since I controlled my wedding plans. Their next scheme was more devious. They bought a cheap necklace online and planned to show it to me at the party, claiming it was a gift for Kelly. After getting me to handle it, they intended to slip it into my bag and later accuse me of stealing it in front of everyone. The goal was to embarrass me and possibly guilt Rob into giving them money as compensation. My aunt, who overheard this plan, warned me and asked how I wanted to handle it. After thinking it through, I told her not to let them know I was aware. Instead, I proposed turning the tables. We would get a replica of the necklace and secretly place it in my mother's bag after she put hers in mine. Then, when they tried to accuse me, we'd reveal their own duplicity, exposing them publicly. My aunt agreed. On the day of the engagement party, everything went as planned. My mother showed me the necklace, and minutes later she gathered my father and Kelly, loudly declaring that the expensive necklace was missing. I discreetly handed the necklace in my bag to my aunt, then approached my mother to ask what was wrong. She accused me of stealing it and demanded to check my bag. I pretended to calm her and suggested checking her own bag first before blaming others. Taking her bag, I opened it in front of everyone and revealed the necklace. The room fell silent as guests started whispering. Before my family could respond, I loudly reminded them that their habit of blaming me for every issue, just as they did during my childhood, no longer worked. I added that while I might not be as beautiful as them, I had far better values, what truly matters in the real world. My family stayed quiet for the rest of the party and left early, humiliated. The next day, I saw multiple voice messages from my parents and other relatives, accusing me of being cruel for bringing up the past. They claimed the necklace incident was unintentional and insisted my attack on their character was unnecessary. Update 1. Thanks to everyone who shared advice. I showed this post and the comments to my aunt, who suggested I have an honest conversation with my parents if I wanted to give our relationship a fair chance. A week after the party, I visited my parents for dinner. They had not contacted me since the incident and seemed cold when I arrived, barely speaking unless I started the conversation. I sat them down and told them how I had known about their plan. I shared my grievances from childhood, trying to understand their perspective and mend our relationship. To my surprise, they were deeply apologetic. Their apology seemed sincere, though I found it hard to trust them completely after the fiasco. With the wedding approaching, I went to the boutique to see my dress and finalize details. While I had planned to take my aunt, I decided to invite my mom and Kelly too, hoping to rebuild our relationship. One detail I forgot to mention earlier, I had lost a lot of weight during college, so I was no longer labeled the ugly one, or at least not to my face. At the dress fitting, my aunt got emotional seeing me in the dress, but my mom and Kelly remained extremely neutral. I tried asking if they wanted to add anything to the overall look, but they just said no. So I took off the dress and packed it away. Out of nowhere, Kelly approached me with an elegant satin dress, suggesting it should be her bridesmaid dress. It was stunning, but after seeing the price tag, she said they couldn't afford it and put it back on the rack. I didn't offer to pay for it then, but later decided to buy the dress for her and my mom as gifts, since they were part of my bridal party. The next day, I purchased the dresses and gave them to them. A few days after that, my family began imposing their opinions on minor wedding details, such as the flower colors, the guest list, or the event schedule. It was awkward at first, but I stood my ground, firmly telling them I'd ask for their input if I needed it. Apparently that didn't sit well with them, because what followed was an absolute disaster. About an hour after they left my house, I got a call from my mom. When I answered, there was no response, so I figured she might have called me accidentally. But just as I was about to hang up, I overheard her and Kelly talking at a bar. They were mocking me. They ridiculed my wedding dress, saying I could never pull off something like that, and expressed disbelief over how I managed to land a man as handsome and wealthy as Rob. They cruelly joked that I wouldn't even qualify to be a maid in his house. It didn't stop there. They called me a tense and openly wished they could access my money without ever having to see me again. That was all I could take. I hung up and had a full-blown emotional breakdown. I couldn't believe how heartless my mom and Kelly were. The next day, I called my aunt and told her everything. She came over, comforted me, and reminded me that I held all the power in the situation. She assured me she'd always be on my side no matter what. Thankfully, my phone's recorder had been on during the call, so I had proof of their conversation in case they tried to deny it. Now, I'm faced with tough decisions, but not without a bit of justice. Update 2. So, I guess people were right when they said I should have cut ties with my family after they attacked me at my engagement party. Now, I'm following that advice with some twists of my own. After my last update, things turned into a complete mess. After much thought, I decided not to include my mom and Kelly in the bridal party. However, I still wanted to gauge where my dad stood in all this. I called him and met with him in person while Mom and Kelly were out shopping. I explained everything that had happened at the boutique and on the phone. Instead of supporting me, he started lecturing me about knowing my place. Angry, I asked what he meant. He said he was tired of beating around the bush and that I should have been offering financial help to the family instead of waiting for them to ask. I told him he should have just asked if that's what he wanted, if he expected me to understand their needs without words. Maybe they should have tried building a relationship with me instead of treating me like a joke in family conversations and constantly comparing me to Kelly. He fired back, saying I should remember they took care of me until I was 18, and that I owed them for being the reason I'm here today. That was the final straw. I realized this family was never truly mine. They had traumatized and sidelined me throughout my childhood, only to come running when they smelled money. I left without saying another word. Over the next 2 days, I didn't hear from anyone in my family, which meant Dad hadn't told Mom or Kelly about our conversation. That gave me time to come up with a plan to expose them. With Rob and my aunt, I devised a plan to host a bridal shower and invite only my mom and Kelly, along with my aunt. I rented a private venue, secretly set up cameras, and planned a game of truth or dare to confront them. The following weekend, the shower took place. Mom and Kelly were thrilled because everything was fully paid for, and they drank heavily. They were overly sweet to me, which meant they had no idea I was onto them. I began asking questions about their phone conversation, with my Aunt Ada by my side as a witness. The first few questions startled them, but they quickly realized I was digging into their private chats. They started lying and trying to deflect. When they avoided giving me straight answers, I played the audio recording of their conversation. They froze, stunned, and after a few moments, they dropped the act entirely. Their true colors came out. They insulted me, saying I never should have had such a good life compared to Kelly, the family's prodigy. They admitted they always felt I wasn't one of them since birth and accused me of playing games instead of helping them financially. I informed them that the entire conversation was being recorded. If they didn't want the video to go public on Facebook, they needed to agree not to attend my wedding. I told them I wished I could disinvite them entirely, but doing so might raise suspicions about our relationship, and I didn't want to attract unnecessary attention. I was actually sparing them from public humiliation. I also warned them that after the wedding, I'd cut ties completely and wouldn't associate with them for any benefits in the future. Lastly, I demanded they return the dresses I'd bought for them or reimburse me for them. Furious, they immediately called a taxi and left. My aunt and I stayed at the venue and made the most of the rest of the night, celebrating our victory over my toxic family. I asked her if she'd walk me down the aisle instead of my father. She started crying but said yes. Now the wedding is a month away, and I'm just waiting for Kelly to return the dresses because I know there's no way she or Mom can afford to pay me back. Update 3. Sorry for the delay in updating, and thank you to everyone who congratulated me on my wedding. That's actually the reason this update took so long. I thought my family would calm down and lay low until the wedding, but that didn't happen. A week after the bridal shower, I still hadn't received the dresses I'd gifted my mom and Kelly. I didn't want to stir up drama so close to the wedding, so I decided to deal with it later. That day, my aunt called, urging me to check Facebook. My family had turned against me and posted a massive 5-part rant claiming I'd been torturing them since coming into money. They made up wild accusations and even dredged up small mistakes from my childhood, normal kids' mischief, presenting them as if they were evil acts. They ended the posts by asking for help, claiming I was blackmailing them for money. My aunt tried commenting to defend me, but any supportive comments were quickly deleted. Surprisingly, some people called out my parents for their cruel remarks about my childhood. Their only response was that they'd endured everything for me and didn't expect others to understand. To top it off, they doxed me by including my phone number, leading to an influx of calls from extended family trying to pressure me into inviting them to the wedding. I showed Rob the posts and he suggested suing them for defamation and harassment. But I told him I wanted nothing more to do with them. Instead, I snapped. I posted the videos where they called me names and blatantly discriminated against me, mocking me for being ugly. Alongside the videos, I added my explanation and declared that they were no longer invited to the wedding. I also demanded payment for the dresses they still had, warning that they'd be hearing from my lawyer otherwise. Many people who had initially supported them changed their stance after seeing the videos and turned against them. My family clearly didn't think I'd go through with posting the videos. They tried intimidating me, but I turned the tables, leaving them with no escape. Their situation spiraled out of control. I even received messages from my maternal grandmother asking me to forgive them. But as soon as I told her she was welcome to skip the wedding if she wanted to side with them, her tone shifted and she backed off. The weeks leading up to the wedding were incredibly stressful. I had everything meticulously planned, including hiring security for the venue in case my family tried to crash, which they did. My dad stayed out of it, but my mom and Kelly showed up with the dresses, acting like nothing had happened. When they were denied entry, they caused a scene outside. Thankfully, this was before most of the important guests arrived. Rob stepped out and warned them to leave or face the police for trespassing. With no other choice, they left, but not before hurling curses at me while I watched from a window. The cherry on top? As they stormed off, my mom accidentally stepped on a sprinkler, drenching herself and Kelly completely. After that, the wedding went off without a hitch. My aunt walked me down the aisle, and many guests from my side apologized for my family's behavior. I told them to forget about it and enjoy the day, which everyone eventually did. Looking back, it was the perfect ending to a difficult chapter. I'm finally free of my toxic family and ready to move forward. Final update. This will be my last update on the incident. While Rob and I were on our honeymoon, I received the dresses from Kelly and Mom by mail. They were completely ruined, likely from the sprinkler incident, but that didn't matter. It was never about the dresses. It was about making a statement. Rob still wanted to sue my family for attempting to defame me with their lies, but I decided against it. They had already done enough damage to themselves with their Facebook posts. My real happiness came from knowing I no longer had to deal with a toxic family. My aunt remains the person I trust the most, and now that I'm pregnant, she might be the only grandparent my child truly deserves. I haven't heard much about the rest of my family. From what I know, my dad has developed a drinking problem, my mom is still trying to spread lies about me, and Kelly has left town to start over. At some point, Mom tried sending me an apology message, but honestly, I don't care. They were the ones who ruined our relationship over petty reasons. Now that I'm happy and at peace, I don't want to risk ruining that with insincere apologies. My focus is on building a better future for myself and my family, free from the drama of the past.